So this is our final lesson in the whole transport, nutrition and storage in plants. So there's 9 little headers that we're going to look at today. So it is, what is the fate of carbon dioxide, oxygen, glucose and water vapor? What are the processes by which these things are moved within a plant? And we're going to talk about modified stems, roots and leaves, and that's modified for food storage, as well as gas exchange and leaf, which we've already done. So at this point we would play a game, but obviously we're not in lesson in which to do it, and it would be matching cards to these particular headers, with the numbers at the end being the numbers of cards that would go with each header. In terms of the theory, we're going to be looking at 2 to 8 today, and we have already looked at 9 and 10 when we covered lesson 1 content. So we talk about carbon dioxide. I should have said this is a word that the SEC like to use. What is the fate of carbon dioxide? And what they mean when they say that is, where does it go to once it's produced, or where are its... So they usually ask it in the context of photosynthesis, and when we go through the process, and in respiration. So just be aware of this word. So it's what happens to it, or... So our source of carbon dioxide for a plant, there are 2 sources. So it's going to come from the atmosphere, or it's going to be made in respiration. And what is it that carbon dioxide uses, our plant uses carbon dioxide for? Well, it uses it in the process of photosynthesis, which is going to be our next topic. So again, this word in a question, the process by which carbon dioxide is transported within a leaf or within a plant, is looking for a very specific answer, and that process is by diffusion. So at this point you should be in your head saying, okay, what's my definition of diffusion? So it's going to be spreading out of molecules, and it's going to be from a region of high concentration to a region of low concentration, and again that is along the concentration gradient. And if it moves from high to low in terms of type of transport, it is passive transport. So we are making loads of links to Form 4 content as we go through this topic. So similarly, oxygen. 2 sources of oxygen, what are they? So again, just like carbon dioxide, it's going to be the atmosphere, but oxygen is also made in photosynthesis. And what would a plant use oxygen for? Well, it's going to use it in respiration. And again, we have the process by which it's transported, and that is going to be diffusion. So glucose. Glucose is made in photosynthesis. What is the fate of it? What happens to it? So it can be used as an energy source in respiration, or it will be stored for a later date. So that is its fate. And again, its use is in respiration, or it's stored as sucrose or starch, or converted into cellulose as components of cell walls. But in terms of use, respiration, stored. They would be the 2 main ones. Then what is the fate of water vapor? So water vapor will be made in respiration. What's going to happen to it? And it is used in photosynthesis, or it will be lost to the atmosphere. So that's out through the stomata, and we covered that last lesson. From here we talk about the food side of transport. So we've already looked at water and root pressure, transpiration, cohesion and adhesion to move water from the xylem in your roots to your stems. We talked about osmosis, how it gets into root hairs and it diffuses across your ground tissue to your xylem. So now we're just going to look at the food component. So food is going to be transported through the sieve tube cells and the sieve plates to wherever it's needed, and it's transported as something called sap. And essentially sap is just sugary water. Now you can remember when we did phloem, we drew sides, we drew little bits, we gave it, as I say, boobs. That's what keeps it in my head. So these were our companion cells. This is obviously cytoplasm. this here is our sieve plates, and these parts here are our sieve tube cells. So it's going to go to wherever it's going to be needed, and the tissue involved in transport of this sap is our phloem. And the food that's going to be transported through it is usually sugars, so glucose or sucrose. So sucrose is, if we can remember from our immobilized enzyme experiment where we put the sucrose through the immobilized beads, sucrose is two glucose molecules stuck together. So sucrose is a disaccharide, whereas glucose is a monosaccharide. Now, we will talk about modified stems and leaves and roots, and there's two contexts for this, and this is your introduction to the first context. We're looking at a modified stem in terms of food storage. We also, in sixth form, will talk about modified stems in terms of reproduction, but we're looking at food now. So a modified stem is something that's modified for food storage, and a potato is an example of a modified stem. So if you can get your hands on a potato, so if you need to run into your kitchen or wherever, and if you look at your potato, you will see there's all of these dots on the skin, and you will actually be able to see that it will have a auxiliary bud marking on it somewhere, but it is a stem, an underground stem that is modified for food storage, and you may also see it called a stem tuber. So just please be aware of that. You have the diagram on page 184 of your potato that will give you some insight into your apical meristem essentially, and lateral ones. So modified root is a root that is modified for food storage, and that's the context we're looking at it. So a carrot is a real good example of a modified root. So it's dicot plant, but it's got a taproot, and this taproot is modified for food storage. And the last one, a modified leaf. So again, it is a leaf modified for food storage in this context of this question. So we're not talking about reproduction. And the example here is an onion. So the parts of the onion that we eat are actually leaves that have become swollen with food. And our last bit in this is looking at gas exchange in leaves. So we've done this already when we did our structure of a plant, and we drew our leaf, and we had our scale scars, and we had our apical bud, and we had our lateral buds out here at the side, and there are these little tiny dots. So lenticels is the name of the word, so just note the spelling, because when you did your Microsoft forms there were some people spelling it C-L-E-S. It's ends in E-C-L-S, and that is what happens, gas exchange in stems. So these guys come into their own in winter when there are no leaves on the trees, so there's no stomata to be opening or closing. If you're a deciduous plant, obviously if you are plants that don't lose their leaves, then you still can have your stomata opened. But in winter, for plants with no leaves, they are still doing respiration, so they still need to remove carbon dioxide and water vapor that's formed, and they will do so using their lenticels. In terms of mineral uptake and transport, so I have asked you that every time we mention minerals or we mention water, minerals are going to come with it, and we've done bits of this already. So they need a variety of minerals to function. The minerals are found in the soil, they're dissolved in water, and they're obviously going to be absorbed into your plant together. When we did our biomolecule chapter, we did the function of 2 plant minerals. So we did calcium, and I gave you the hint that in calcium is for strong bones in us. Obviously plants don't have bones, so what is their strong part of their cells? And that is in your cell walls. And magnesium is for my tomato growers. If you grow tomatoes and they're deficient in magnesium, your leaves go yellow, so you have to add more magnesium into your feed. So magnesium is responsible for making chlorophyll. Now there are other minerals in there, potassium nitrates, phosphates, they're all required, but these two are specific to our chapter 3 biomolecules. So what do we think is the process by which these guys move in? So they come with the water, but they're not necessarily going to move in with the water. So they're going to be absorbed by diffusion, because again, osmosis is a type of diffusion that relates to water, whereas the minerals will move by diffusion, or they will move by active transport. So again, just to remind what active transport is, it is going from a low concentration, area of low concentration, to an area of high concentration. It is against your concentration gradient, and you need energy in which to do that. So I think the analogy we gave you is a person after leaving a concert and realizes they have to turn around and go back in, and it's hard work trying to get there. So active transport is similar. It's hard work for the minerals to go from low to high concentration, so that requires energy. And again, they will be transported from the roots in the xylem, and once they're in, they're dissolved in water and they move that way. So that brings us to the end of this particular chapter. I'm on Zoom should you require any help or have any questions, and you will find the homework in the class notebook page. And a reminder, if we're using this through remote learning, our next lesson we don't have one. Thank you.